Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your Viking hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC. And when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we got you covered. We shall kick off this new season of anime, as we do every time here on Anime Brain Freeze, with a boatload of impressions from the new premieres that we will rattle down as quickly as we can in the sneak peek. And after that, we will grab our swords and axes and go to war together with the Vikings from the first season of one of my most eagerly awaited anime adaptions in recent years, Vinland Saga. Also, before we get to all of that goodness, we have a bit of housekeeping to do. So, just as a heads up, this will be a pretty short season for us and for you, as our listeners, I guess. We will only do 4 episodes this time, and after that go on hiatus for a while, starting late February. I'll fill you all in on the details once we get to episode 91. Will be our season finale. But don't worry, there will be enough anime talk until then. We'll actually do episode 89 and 90 back to back, so only 1 week break between those 2 episodes instead of the usual 2 weeks. Be aware of that. Now, without further ado, let's head into the sneak peek. Alright. Here we are, in everybody's favorite segment, he said presumptuously.
Speak for the audience. You know what's best for them.
Sure. So, of course, since the new anime season started, winter season 2020 to be exact, there were a bunch of new premieres, and John and I tried to check out as many as we wanted to, I guess, and could, and as many as sounded interesting for one reason or another. And for first-time listeners, as usual, we have 3 sections in this segment. We have the nopes, the maybes, and the keepers. The nopes, the things that we immediately said, no, those are not worth our time. We dropped those shows immediately. The maybes, shows that we watched like one or a couple of episodes of and decide, maybe this could be something, maybe not. We'll have to watch more to decide. And the keepers, the shows that we are pretty damn sure we're gonna stick with until the end of the season. So, with all that out of the way, John, what is your first nope for winter 2020?
My first nope. You know what? I'm going to roll these 2 shows together because they are very functionally identical to me. And I didn't really write up plot summaries, so I'll just do my best to tell you what exactly they're about. The first one is Join the Pack, Seton Academy. Have you ever wondered what it was like if you were just your normal, everyday, average human person guy and you go to school with a whole bunch of animals and some of them are weirdly anthropomorphic? And
who hasn't? I mean, come on now.
And there's a wolf girl who wants to make you part of her pack, but there's only one other human girl in the school and you want to get with her. And
is it a real wolf girl? Is it like furry bait, or is this like wolf girl? So wolf ears and maybe a tail, and that's it.
Bingo.
Oh, there we go.
And I promise these 2 shows are related for one reason, and I'll get to it in a second. The other show is A Destructive God Sits Next to Me, and it's about this kid who is the eternal straight man to this other kid who is eternally inflicted with everybody's favorite Chunibyo.
Wait. Sorry, but is that a sneaky Haruhi sequel or something? Because I could swear that is the plot of fucking Harumi Suzumiya.
Yeah, except this kid is just a Chunibyo and, not actually God.
Oh, okay. Well, that's...
Spoilers for Haruhi, I guess?
Yeah, old show. Anyway, but yeah, that sounds much more boring.
And then there's a third kid who just eggs the both of them on because he just wants to stir the shit. So what these 2 shows have in common is that, hey, you know what's really funny?
Being loud. Being loud is funny as hell, isn't it? Oh, it's just the funniest thing in the world!
So both of these shows are just shouting matches between all of the characters, and it's not funny. It's just annoying and tiring. And it's like, I think I got through one episode of each of them, and I was like, I'm good.
So you're telling me
I'm set.
The whole cast is made up of Zenitsu?
Somehow slightly less annoying, but it's still just
That's a
yelling.
low bar.
It's still just yelling because that's funny, isn't it? And it's like, no, it's not.
Yeah. That's a bad trope, but yeah, very heavily featured in anime.
Yeah, and that's why I sort of lumped those two shows together. And because it's the same sort of like, oh, it's a comedy set in a high school, middle school, question mark? I don't know. But either way, it's like, no, thanks.
Mm.
So, what do you got first?
Oh, this might be one of your maybes, because you actually told me about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is Oda Cinnamon Nobunaga.
Yeah, that, you know what? It should be a drop. It really should.
So, this is, just to get this out of the way, the story is that a famous Japanese warlord from the Warring State era, Oda Nobunaga, and a bunch of other famous Japanese people, like from that Sengoku period, are reborn as dogs in modern-day Japan. Which is, on paper, already an incredibly stupid premise, obviously. But I love dogs, so does John.
Yes.
So we both had to check it out, him first, and then after he told me, I had to check it out as well. And the show is fine. It's a comedy. It has basically like one joke it's doing over and over again. And that's
the problem.
Yeah, at least it's not yelling. It's just being, look, the proud warlord is a dog. How quaint. And there's also a bunch of talk about and making fun of historical events and people from the time period he's from. And that's also like not really presented in a funny way. Maybe if you're more familiar with these characters from history lessons, like if you went to Japanese school and learned more about these characters, then maybe. But yeah, I just didn't. I was like, yeah, this is fine, this is all right, but this is not gonna hold my interest.
But can we talk about the best part of the show?
Obviously, the ending.
The ending sequence and the episode previews are the best because they have the actual doggos in there that they modeled the characters after, and it's great.
It's
fantastic. You
fantastic.
see the doggos running around and doing dog things.
Yeah, and it's like they really put some effort into making it like the standard anime ending, where it's like dramatically sung song in the background, and then Cinnamon strutting through the grass, and then at the very end, like sitting down with his friends next to him and looking at the sunset. It's very anime. So whoever made that ending and the episode preview, very well done. I like that. But I think we already had the best Warring States period Wangfest a bunch of years ago with Sengoku Basara. In my opinion, that's all you need if you want to portray the people from that period in a wacky manner.
Remember when they did an adaptation of Samurai Warriors and it was a trash fire?
No.
You're better for it.
There's probably a reason for that. So, yeah, but that's my first drop. I'm glad I checked out the first episode for shits and giggles, but that's all I need, I think.
I mean, honestly, the only reason I would keep watching it is for the episode previews.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a valid reason, don't get me wrong, but you can tell me about the highlights if you actually do keep up with it. So
I don't know.
What's your next nope?
Hatena Illusion.
I thought about checking that out, but then I heard about that, like the main female character is a really annoying tsundere, and I kind of hate that character trope, so whatever.
Yeah, so it's all about this boy who travels to Tokyo, Makoto, who wants to be the apprentice of this famous magician, Mamoru Hoshisato. Like many years ago, he met Mamoru's daughter, Hatena, and Hatena was under the false assumption that Makoto was a girl when he was actually a boy. So when Makoto shows up many years later and it's like, oh, he was a boy all along, she's just sort of like, ew, I can't live with a boy. And she comes across as very haughty and very annoying, and I was kind of like on the fence because of that, and I was like, maybe there's something to this, maybe it gets better. So I tried to watch the second episode, and because The first episode, the production values were incredible and it looked really, really good. So I was like, hey, maybe it'll at least be worth watching because of that. Then the other shoe dropped. The second episode is such a severe drop in terms of animation quality that it was actively distracting. I will tell you this. Even with shows I drop, I will usually try to watch through the full episode that I'm on, just to give it that courtesy. I couldn't with this. I got halfway through the second episode and I was like, I can't do this to myself. And it was a hard drop. The really trite story, the annoying title character, and slipshod production. But, apparently Funimation saw fit to bankroll it, so
I guess the first episode was just like your standard showboat episode where it's hey, we gotta like the catfish thing where it's like, hey, you gotta catch these people early and then maybe they stick with us even if our production values tank immediately after that. That's a shame.
Also, I love that one of the Hoshi Sato family butlers, his name is Jeeves.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure, why not?
So you're just gonna lean into, the sort of classic trope on that. And all right. But that aside, it was like there's no, I don't think so, man. So that's enough of that. I don't want to talk about that trash fire anymore. What do you got next?
My next one is Magia Record. Puella, Magi, Madoka, Magica side story. That's a long fucking title.
Hey man, did you play the mobile game?
No. And I'm not interested. And also, I think I'm not interested in a new Madoka Magica show or material that Urobuchi wasn't involved with. I mean, they're doing something interesting where it's like it's a kind of prequel or, it says side story. So it's supposed to, I guess, happen at the same time, just as the original series did, just in a different city. You got different magical girls. That fucker Kyubey is back. And I don't know if I can stand him for another whole season. I don't know if this will work out, especially since this is a mobile game adaptation. It certainly looks good. Like Chef doing, their best work again. Just there's a lot of budget behind this. But I don't know if at the first episode I was just kind of completely tuned out. I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is more Madoka. But I got everything out of that franchise and that story that I wanted. Like most of Urobuchi's stuff, when he does one season, he tells everything he wants to tell in that first season, and that's why it feels satisfying. But that's also why after you're done with it, you don't really need more of this. And it's the same with Psychopaths. I'm very reluctant to go back to that series, even though the third season is supposed to be pretty good. Or, let's say, good enough, and the movie also, and he was involved with that. But I'm also like, I liked the first season so much, and that was such a perfect full circle thing by the end, that I don't really know. I mean, we all know how season 2 worked out, and I learned my lesson from that, I think. So, I mean, I'm not averse to checking out more of it, especially if, the original creator is involved again. That's why I at least want to check out the movie for Psychopaths. But I don't know really who is responsible. I tried to find out who the writers for this are. And so when I looked it up, they weren't listed. So I want to know, hey, what have they done before? Like, you can't give me like a new Madoka Magica and then base it on a fucking mobile game and then be like, yeah, this should be enough to get your interest. I'm like, no. Sorry, this is, just the name alone won't do it for me this time around. So, yeah, it looks great, like I said. And if you're really dialed into Madoka Magica and you really like that series, as I love the first series. But if you also like the movies and you like the mobile game, then you're probably gonna watch this. But I think I'm good right now. So, nope, not this time. So, I guess, yeah, that's what it comes down to. So, what's your next nope, John?
My last one is Dorohedoro.
Oh, yeah, that's one of my babies, but bordering on a nope. Which is sad, because I was looking forward to this.
I think I got half a minute into the first episode, and there was some weird body horror shit going on, immediately. And I was just like, nope, I can't do that. I cannot do that. So That was my experience with it. I couldn't tell you what the show was about other than some dude looking down the throat of a lizard man, seeing that there's a guy sitting in...
We'll get back to it once we get to the maybe section, and I'll talk about it a bit more, but yeah.
Okay.
Might be a note for me too, I don't know yet. But my next real note might be a maybe for you, so this might be a fluid transition. Sorcerous Stabber Orphen.
I think I'm going to call that a keeper, to be honest.
Whoa, okay. So let me say first my 2 cents, why this is a nope for me, and then, maybe we'll get back to it in the keepers or in the maybes for you then, whatever you want to put it in. The feeling that I got while watching that was, through the entirety of the first episode, everything about this feels incredibly 90s.
I mean...
Yeah,
yes.
I know. Right? The tone, the storytelling, the humor, the characters, their voice acting, the fucking music. An entire blast from the past package. And that in itself is not a bad thing. Not at all. I also don't know if it's a good thing in this case. Like, for me, instead of feeling old school in a nostalgic way, I was constantly thinking, they definitely don't do some of these things anymore in anime, and that is kind of a good thing. So, it's like, I don't know, I couldn't really get engaged with the characters and stuff like that, and the setup was partially standard, but that wasn't a problem. I was just like, I don't think I want this kind of nostalgia bomb right now. I'm not in the mood for that. It looked fine, the animation looked fine, everything, but I don't know, it felt too 90s for me. Just right now, this moment in time, I'm, guess, not in the mood for 90s. But I guess you are, so we'll talk about it later again when it comes up. Mm-hmm. So, what would be your first maybe?
How about Somali and the Forest Spirit?
Oh, that's one of my keepers. We're all over the place this time around. So yeah.
What is happening?
Yeah. Well, say your thing, and I'll say mine later.
I mean, it's basically all about this forest spirit, this golem, who happens upon this lone human girl, and it's all about a story of their travels going from place to place. And it turns out that this golem is trying to help this girl find her parents, because there may or may not have been a massive human extinction at some point. Not really entirely sure of the details as far as how the story is being told yet, but the very large breadcrumbs are there for us to follow in terms of that story. And I mean, it just seems okay, I guess. I feel like I was sort of flashing back to a little bit to the ancient Magus Bride. So I don't know, but
yeah,
I want to see
not too
how
far from it.
Yeah, I want to see how it pans out. I mean, the big plot hook that they dropped in, like, the end-ish of the second episode was like, oh, that's why. Oh, and, it's sort of, it helped establish the emotional link to the character pretty well. So maybe I'll stick with it. I'm not 100% sure.
I'll say my 2 cents a bit later then. So, okay. My first maybe is Darwin's game. Which I made fun of when I read this fucking plot summary. And for good reason, because this is basically a death game with a gacha component, kinda, and that's what it sounded like in the fucking plot summary.
Awesome!
So there's like this phone game app that gives people random superpowers when they actually install it and lets them compete with each other for survival. The problem is there is no actual escape from this game after you accepted the invitation.
So what happens if you get a crap power? You can't uninstall and re-roll. What a shit game.
Yeah, incredibly shit. And the only way you can survive is the only way out of the game is to either die or to keep winning and survive. And yeah, it's one character, his 2 friends basically get offed in the first episode, and he is in over his head, but makes an acquaintance that seems to be already more invested in the game. It's like this fucking crazy killer girl with these chains she can send at people that seem to be like follow her every will. She can like steer them with her mind. So shit like that, and he seems to be, like, our main character seems to be have this like hidden super overpowered power, of course, because he can just copy things or summon things he has touched before, like, and as many as he wants, I think. So he could basically like touch a machine gun and I think summon it at will or shit like that. I don't know. I don't know how it works yet. It's a weird power set, but I get really like OP vibes from that dude, even though he's not the strongest fighter. But we'll see. But, you know, so far this sounds pretty horrible, and it kind of is. But it's got a great soundtrack. The animation was really good in the first 2 episodes. Like I said, the protagonist is pretty much Cardboard Kun. But the premise is kind of decent in terms of how it's set up, where it's like, oh, yeah, it's this mystery. Who's responsible for the app? What is actually the reason for this? Is there just some fucking asshole that wants to see people die at the top and responsible for this? But yeah, they're teasing a bunch of characters who might be involved, and I don't know if conspiracy is also involved. Well, we'll see. But, you know, often those kind of series are not actually interested in doing anything interesting with the mystery behind who set up this game and why, and instead just focus on the Saw-like death competitions. So I hope that doesn't happen, that there's actually some plot that's moving forward. And I've only checked out, like I said, the first 2 episodes, so I'm not sure. And also there seems to be an icky slave component. So I'm kind of doubtful I'd stick with this, but we'll see. It's like after, I don't know how, I don't exactly even remember how it happens, but, that's the only way you can get out of a match once it has begun, outside of, you know, dying or winning, is you completely submit to the person that you fought against and become their, basically, they become your owner. And that's, of course, what happens with our main character and the girl he fights in the 2nd episode.
Of course.
Yeah, because she falls for him, and it's like, you know where this is going. Anime! So I don't know. This seems very much trash, but maybe it's a trash show I can watch and laugh at without being too disgusted by it. We'll see. I don't know yet. But yeah, for now it's a maybe. Might become a no pretty quickly, though. So, Joe, what's your second maybe?
I'm going to go with Asteroid in Love. So it's about this girl, Mira, who one day meets this boy, Owl, at this like town camping outing sort of thing, and they gaze at a starry sky together, and Mira learns that there's a star with her own name, but there's no star named Owl. So the two promise to one day, you know, discover a star or an asteroid or something and name it after Owl. Several years later, Mira is in high school and decides to join the astronomy club to help fulfill her promise. But unfortunately, enrollment in the astronomy club is so low that it's been rolled together with the Earth Sciences Club. So she goes to join the club room and is reunited with Ao. But hey, guess what? Ao is not a boy. Ao is a girl. So
whoops.
It's sort of the opposite problem that Hatena Illusion had, except the characters are much more accepting of each other, and it feels a lot more wholesome. Christ. I mean, the show's fine. It's got like a nice sort of easygoing pastel-y color scheme. The characters are all really nice to each other. But there's only so many shows you can watch about cute girls doing cute things, and the show seems like it could be fine to watch. I don't know if I'll stick with it all the way to the end. I guess I'll have to see if there's some like life-changing revelation halfway through, which I'm willing to put money on. Probably not. But, as it is, it seems like, very sort of, it has like a very chilled out vibe to it. So, it's a fine show. Whether or not I finish it, I don't know, but we'll see. So, what you got next?
My next maybe is Pet, which Seems to be about a couple of people with psychic powers who can manipulate the minds, memories, and perception of human beings. Haven't quite gotten a grasp on where the plot will go yet. Like, what might be our two main characters work for a criminal organization that uses their powers for its own gain, I think, apparently. I mean, it's kind of neat. There's some visually interesting bits and pieces in there. For example, when the characters use their powers and like completely distort the perception of the people they use their powers on, like showing them weird, freaky imagery. Suddenly a giant eye appears in a wall or shit like that. You know, visually interesting bits. The animation itself is not great, which is no surprise because Geno made this, who brought us Kokoku and Golden Kamui. Kokoku also had a lot of story problems, but both seasons of Golden Kamui were a shit ton of fun, and one of our favorites from the past years.
And it's coming back for a third season!
Yes, baby! So,
but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yes, we're very happy. So yeah, I'm willing to see where this is going. This seems to be kind of low-key crime thriller thing for now with a neat sci-fi fantasy aspect to it. But I don't really know what to make of the characters yet. So far, everyone in this seems to be kind of an asshole. Or, you know, I don't know, you know, just criminals. Fuck. And killers. So I don't know. I don't know where this is going. So far, I've not really been able to really attach myself to anything in the story department, merely because I really don't know where it's going to go. But I've only seen one episode, so we'll see. I'm kind of interested to see where it goes now, but that might change. I'm going to overlook some of the shortcomings in the presentation for now until I know if the plot and or characters are worth my time. But I'm willing to stick it out for like for 1 or 2 more episodes. So, yeah, John, your next one.
A certain scientific Railgun tea. Those of you who watch the Crunchyroll subs, you'll understand what I'm going for.
If you would talk to John from a couple of years ago, you would be surprised that this is only a maybe for him.
I don't think I really need to go too deep into the details because we've talked about this in Index plenty before. But Railgun is the quote-unquote science side, and it focuses on Misaka, the level 5 Esper with electrical powers, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And the reason this is a maybe is because after Index 3, after it had been 8 years between Index 2 and Index 3, and how really just not good Index 3 was, and how sort of just boring Accelerator was, I'm feeling just left really cold by the whole Raildex franchise. And I'm like, you know, I like this world, I like these characters, but also you have to take into account the fact that Railgun, even though it takes place at the same time as Index, the way the story is told is it's kind of offset. So we just went back in time several years to the big Academy City Sports Festival that we already have seen in another form. So it's kind of like, yeah, okay.
I mean, that could give a different, interesting perspective on that, I guess.
I mean, there's characters in here that we haven't really seen before. Maybe this time we'll see more of one of the characters that was introduced in Railgun S. Her name was Shokuho. She has the power to control people's minds with the universal remote control that she carries around.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of neat, I guess.
She's Control Freak from Teen Titans. I get it.
Pretty much. But yeah, I mean, I'll see how I feel. I will say that, boy, after Index 3, there must have been a shakeup in the staff at JC Staff, because the animation quality went from being to, I guess it's passable now.
Well, that's something, I guess.
Yeah. So, you know, I'll see how I feel in 3, 4, 5, 6 months, I guess, depending on how much longer I stay with it. What do you have next for maybes?
My next maybe is Dorohedoro. So I was kind of looking forward to it because I heard good things and it looked kind of freaky. And it definitely is. Like, the one word I would describe it with right now is what the fuck. That's 3 words.
I was about to say that's 3 words.
Yeah. I wrote down WTF, so it kind of just read as 1 word for me, but still. Show notes! You failed me once again. Anyway, it's in Netflix chair until further notice, so that makes things, I guess, a bit more complicated, but not really. But yeah, it's about this restaurant chef lady called Nikaido and her human lizard buddy Kaiman, who live in a weird fucked up city that gets constantly invaded by sorcerers who experiment on the residents for some reason. That's where the body horror aspect comes in that John mentioned earlier. And our 2 main characters hunt down these sorcerers because of the guy who literally lives inside of Kaiman for some reason. I have no idea what's going on in this show right now after watching this first episode. There seems to be a bunch of weird shit. Is the guy inside Kaiman himself? Was he experimented on? Is this like, I don't know, weird sibling situation or something? Why does he want to... Did one of the sorcerers do that to him? Is that why he wants the guy inside him look at them and then tell him that that's the sorcerer who was responsible for that? I have no fucking idea. That show is also hyper violent. It's very bizarre, but it also seems like it could be pretty fun and out there. Like just from the concept alone, the visuals, the style, everything is very unconventional, and I am always up for that shit. Like I'm there for that kind of stuff, like JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, basically that, or was that until it became the mainstreamest anime, not in terms of story, but now people actually notice it and everybody references it in memes and stuff like that because it's a very good show. So yeah. I mean, Dorohedoro has the potential to be that as well, just in terms of how fucking out there and crazy it is. But, like I mentioned, firstly, it's a Netflix jail, and secondly, it does one of my least favorite things in anime, mixing CG characters with hand-drawn ones. So sadly, our 2 main characters are CG. And even more sadly, this is not good anime CG, like in Beastars, for example. It's stiff, awkward garbage CG, a la Berserk, or, everything you get from Polygon Pictures. And of course...
Sounds like the problem that the magnificent Kotobuki had.
Yeah. Although, if I remember correctly, you said the CG when they were in the planes was all right. I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, that was fine. It was just, you have to choose one or the other.
Yes.
You can't do both.
Yeah, mixing in, that subpar CG, mixing that with the hand-drawn stuff that looks amazing in the show, because it's MAPPA, and when MAPPA has budget and does good things, they do good hand-drawn stuff. So... yeah, then the bad CG stands out even more. And yeah, that's kind of a shame. Like, just in terms of style, in terms of tone, in terms of everything, that show is completely my cup of tea. But it's just this weird stylistic choice that is just a very personal gripe for me that I just fucking, I hate it. I hate it so much. And I wish it would die. And I don't know why they're doing it. It makes no sense. It's like, oh yeah, we can do better fight scene. I mean, the show we're going to talk about later in our review mixes CG with hand-drawn stuff when it comes to character animation. But very sparsely and very effectively. And Dorohedoro seems to be like, no, we're just going to do our main character CG all the time to save money and maybe more elaborate fight sequences or what have you. And then for some reason, the rest of the characters is hand-drawn most of the time. Some aren't, but... the sorcerers so far, I think, have been mostly hand-drawn. And it's super weird, and it's super off-putting, and it's distracting, and it pulls me out of the show every time it happens. And yeah, and like I said, the CG in itself doesn't look good. It's fucking stiff, it's weird, it's, especially after watching something like Beastars, which we're going to talk about later this season, but this is so lackluster. And yeah, like I said, the show seems to have some potential, and... be it only due to its sheer unfiltered madness, but the presentation is kind of ruining it. And I don't know if I'll stick with it, which is kind of a bummer, because I was looking forward to this. This looked very interesting, and it still looks very interesting, but I don't know if that will be enough to help me fucking black out the problems, the issues I have with the stylistic choices. I'll give it like 1 or 2 more episodes and then decide. So, John, if I've counted correctly, you only have 1 maybe left.
Yes.
So, since I have 3, I'm going to go with 1 more of mine first. and that is ID Invaded.
Hey, that's what I was going to pick.
Oh, shit! Well, okay then.
Boy, this show's fucking weird.
It is super weird. So,
it's kind of like if Psycho-Pass were way further up its own ass.
Yeah, kinda. Yeah, I guess. It's very Psycho-Passy. You're right. But also some other things. Like, it's by Aoki, the director of Fate Zero and Recreators.
Mm-hmm. Which a point in its favor because he's a great director.
Kinda demands my attention. And apparently maybe music by Sawano. I'm not sure about that yet. He wasn't really listed there, but some of the tracks sounded eerily. I know there's some other guy listed as music design or something, sound design.
I looked it up and I can't remember who, but it's not Sawano. It's some other. You know what? You talk. I'll look it up in real time.
But even if it was Sawano, both these people, Aoki and Sawano, were also involved with Aldnoah Zero, and we all know how that went, so it doesn't necessarily... It's not an immediate seal of approval and quality. But yeah, Fate Zero and Recreators are fucking great, and that's why I'm already interested in it. But the story in itself is pretty interesting. You said it's pretty up its own ass, you're right about that, but also, like, the setup is kinda... feels like this kind of interesting sci-fi thing where it's about a group of investigators creating, I guess, a virtual construct of a killer's unconsciousness, if I remember correctly.
And that's the part where I'm like, wait, hold on, huh? How are you getting inside his mind, inside the killer or whoever's mind? So
they're explaining it with this... Like, they explain it away with this fucking technobabble shit where it's like, hey, every time a fucking psychopath or whatever serial killer thinks about committing a crime or doing something bad, he leaves behind these weird particles. I forgot what they were calling it.
I think they called it cognition particles.
Cognition particles, right? And they can collect that with kind of with these EMP. Something meters with like from Ghostbusters or something. They can just suck those up and analyze them. And from that, they create basically a construct, like I said, of the killer's unconsciousness, and those constructs are called ID wells. And of course, they do that to try to determine his or her identity and the next possible victim. And then to, further investigate that stuff and determine that, they send the consciousness of a real person, of an investigator, a pilot, so to speak, which is in this case also named the Brilliant Detective. That's like the code name for it, into this VR construct world to solve a murder puzzle. While they investigate on the outside. So this is a procedural. Right now, anyway, with a side of Minority Report, The Cell, and a bit of Tron, I guess, maybe, in a way, which is somewhat extremely up my alley. Like, a mix of all those things is like, hey, we should make a fucking show for CC this season. So what fucking influences could we mix? Oh, we got a procedural here, we got crazy sci-fi bullshit like Minority Report and The Cell, and... maybe a bit of fantasy in there too. So this is what we got. And I'm like, okay, sure. Right. You have my attention. You had my curiosity. Now you have my attention. And I think I will like this show. The thing right now is, I don't know if this will be like the monster of the week thing. And like you said, it's up in its own ass, as in it's very talky. It really likes to talk about how it's setting up its world, and like I said, a lot of
fine, but it seems like there's this expectation that you already understand things that are going on, and it's like, hey, dudes, you gotta slow down a little bit.
I think like the first episode is pretty what the fuck. By the third episode, you got a pretty clear understanding of what's happening. Especially when it comes to our main brilliant detective. And I think he's a pretty damn interesting character. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be in there wouldn't be already so attached to the show as I am right now, even though it's still a maybe. But his character setup is pretty interesting, and I want to see what they do with it. The mind constructs in itself hold a big possibility for interesting visuals and vistas, and so far what they've been doing with that and how that relates to the killers is kind of interesting. So it's just weird. It's a weird, interesting sci-fi procedural show, and I'm kind of into those. So we'll see. I don't know. I don't know if it will stay good, and the animation quality is all right, but nothing like
it's
super impressive.
It's kind of average.
Yeah.
A lot of the characters have very angular faces.
Yeah.
Which I guess it doesn't bug me so much, but it is obvious it's a very deliberate character design choice.
Yes. Feels a bit simplified, I guess. But yeah, I like it a lot actually, but I don't know. I mean, I've already watched 3 episodes, so I don't know if I'll drop it now, but we'll see. Maybe after like by episode 6, I'm like, okay, they're always doing the same thing. This is not really leading anywhere, but I have a feeling we're gonna get some plot thing later on. You know, there seems to be a big bad hiding in the shadows. And yeah, it's cool, and I want to see where it goes. I don't know if I'll stick with it, but right now I'm interested. So yeah.
The music apparently is composed. They're credited as U/S.
Okay, interesting.
So,
but yeah, the reason I thought this was Sawano for a moment is because there's in the first episode there's like this moment where our brilliant detective like fucking does his thing, pulls all the different pieces together, and there's suddenly fucking rock electronic music with vocals, and I'm like, this is so Sawano stuff. But the rest of the music kind of wasn't sure. But yeah.
I mean, who knows, that S might stand for Sawano for all we know.
Yeah, wait, you said U/S?
Yes.
Oh, he loves to do that shit.
He does love to do weird shit with like slashes and
ZK. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it could be. It could be.
Could be a band thing of his. We'll see. And I mean, he and Aoki have worked before, like I said, in Outlaw Zero entry creators. So it doesn't seem too far-fetched that that's actually him incognito. So we'll see. Maybe we'll know by the time the review or the chapter might come around. Yeah, but I got 2 more maybes left. The first one is Inspector, which is about a girl named Kotoko, who got abducted by yokai as a child, and in exchange for her right eye and left leg, she got turned into their protective goddess of wisdom. And now she can basically talk to the yokai and help them with problems, whatever those might be. But she is maybe not that physically strong, and maybe her powers have some limits, so apparently she now feels like she needs some help with her investigations, so she seeks help of a man named Kuro, who she fell in love with 2 years ago before this show happened, and who also has an otherworldly secret, and she wants to rope him into helping her with her various supernatural missions. And I really like the setup and the 2 main characters. The yokai are a lot of fun, or appropriately creepy, depending on the situation, because there are good yokai and bad yokai in the show. And it's pretty clear that, especially if you look at the OP, that the show is also going for a romance subplot with the 2 main characters, which I'm not averse to, even though Kotoko looks a bit young. She's supposed to be 17, but that's not what she looks like, but that's anime for you. Yeah, I like that she is pretty forward about her romantic interest for Kuro, and I hope they actually go anywhere with that for once, and it's not gonna be just like this back and forth, will they, won't they thing. There's a chance that they're actually gonna do something with that, like the OP is like a very nice dance montage between those 2. And I like that. And yeah, I like the fantasy aspect. The animation is pretty good. But yeah, it looks pretty solid, and like I said, I like the 2 main characters, so I'm interested to see more. I've only seen 1 episode, but that was pretty damn interesting, and came out kind of out of nowhere. I didn't expect this to be as enticing as it was. So yeah, it's a maybe right now. I have to watch like 1 or 2 more episodes to decide if I'll stick with it. But yeah, I liked it. I like what I saw. And the last maybe is Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken, which is the new TV series by Masaki Yuasa, the guy behind Devil May Cry Baby, which I reviewed for our show, and also Mind Game and Ping Pong and a bunch of other stuff. He has like this very unique animation style. It's about these three girls who are into, well, two of them are into anime a lot, and they both want to work in that field. Like Asakusa, one of our main characters, wants to be a concept designer, and Mizusaki, one of the others, wants to be an animator, and she also has a rich family who try to stop her from pursuing that career path because, they have other plans for her, whatever. And then the third one of the bunch is Kanamori, who is not interested in anime at all, but she's Asakusa's best friend and in it for the possible money, because she's like, hey, these two have potential, so if I sponsor them and if I get them to be famous, maybe I can get some money out of this. She's great. And this series just oozes creativity. The architecture of their school campus alone looks like some kind of fantasy dungeon, which they also remark on. It's the reason why Asakusa wanted to move there, I guess, and want to go to school there. And she was also inspired by that universe's version of Future Boy Conan, I guess. I forgot how he's named in the show, but it's kind of similar. And it's funny. Like, there are a lot of references to anime in there and other anime and stuff. And the coolest fucking thing I've seen, I've only watched the first episode so far, but the coolest fucking thing is when they actually, Asakusa and Mizusaki design like this spaceship that looks kind of like a dragonfly on paper. They just draw it, and then the camera zooms into the page, and suddenly that painting, that drawing comes to life, and they just step into that drawing and start adding things to that fucking spaceship by just using it in their... This is supposed to happen in their imagination, in their mind, while they design the concept art for this thing. But, they just jump into the ship, and then they imagine, oh no, we're being attacked by enemy forces, and we have to make this thing fly. But no, we're missing this thing, so we have to add this to the ship. And what if we can't add it? Wait, we have to, get outside and maybe start the engines the other way. And you basically go with them through this through this creative process of actually coming up with a logic version of their art in that universe that they created. And that's so fucking great. That's so fascinating. Showing us this very playful way of coming up with a really cool concept design, of really cool concept art for what could be an anime show at some time. And I'm so fucking sure this is what Masaku Yuasa did, as a child at some point too, or even as an adult, because this series just smells like at every corner. This is a love letter to animation, and it seems to be a bit more interested in the creative process than Shirobako was, which couldn't hold my interest because it was more focused on the kind of production side of things. Yeah. And how that affects people and how that works. And that's interesting too, but not as interesting to me as the creative process of actually coming up with that kind of shit is to me. And this seems to be what the show is about. It's putting it in this kind of surrealist, stranger than fiction setting, and then just rolling with it and have these characters be creative and designing a world that they wanna bring close to people and want to enrich their lives with. And that's great. And yeah, the first season was amazing. I don't know if it stays that way. That's why it's still a maybe. It should be a keeper for all intents and purposes, and that's why I named it as my last maybe, because it's bordering to be on a keeper. But the thing is, if this is all that's going to happen in this show, which is these two characters creating anime, and that's all there is to it, maybe my experience, like I said, my experience with Shirobako was that couldn't hold my interest. And even though I'm more interested in the creative side of things, I also don't know if that will be able to hold my interest for 13 episodes or something. So we'll see. But for now, I guess Masaki Yuasa's passion, or the guy who created the manga, to be fair, I think this is an adaptation of existing material. But, both those people's passions can be felt in this production. And yeah, this might be enough to string me along. and I like the main characters. So we'll see. So far, it's really fun. Don't know if it's a keeper quite yet, but it might very well be. So yeah, we'll see. All right, I guess we're gonna swiftly move into the keepers.
Okay, so just as in passing, last year there was a show called Laid Back Camp, and we didn't talk about it because I kind of watched it after it aired, and then I kind of forgot to bring up that I did watch it. Oops. But it was a show about this group of girls who just like to go out camping and just have a generally chill time. And, it's, as the title suggests, very laid back. And it's the best adjective, I think, to describe it, which is me echoing the sentiment of lots of other people, is comfy.
Oh, yeah. That's what I heard.
It is a very comfy, easy to watch, easy to enjoy show that's all about just, going out on a trip to the countryside, laying under the stars, just having a nice quiet night or two. And I feel like if you want something with a really, really chilled out vibe, it's worth watching. Which leads into what's airing this season is a show called Room Camp, which is they kind of took it and cut it down to like 3-minute episodes, and it's about a different set of the group of the girls just going around to different landmarks and like learning about them and just seeing different sites and I guess trying to fill in this stamp book so they can possibly win some sort of prize at the end. And it's just this really, again, this really just easygoing show about, hey, go out and see the stuff that's around you. You never know what you might discover. I mean, the second episode has them going to the Mount Fuji Information Center, learning about it, and unfortunately not being able to see the mountain in the distance because it's a rainy, foggy day. But hey, it's sometimes when you go out on adventures, it's sometimes it's about the trip and not the destination. So, watch Laid Back Camp, watch Room Camp. They're both very, very, cute, easy to watch shows. And that's my piece on them.
Even from people who are not really that much into anime, I've heard that Laid Back Camp was like their comfy, chill out, surprise show thing where it's like, hey, I just started watching this for some reason or someone recommended it to me and it helped me to get in the Zen zone after work.
Yeah. It definitely helps you relax a lot. So if you're looking for something like that, definitely watch it.
All right.
So what do you got?
My first keeper you already mentioned, and that is Somali and the Forest Spirit. I don't know if we've already mentioned that, but that is a satellite show.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. So of course I'm interested. Symphogear guys, Macross guys. I didn't really know what to expect from this, and like you partially already explained, it's about this golem dad traveling through a fantasy world with his little girl, adopted human daughter, Somali. No, the golem hasn't been given a name yet, if I'm not mistaken. He's just called Golem, and he was tasked with protecting the forest, and now he's protecting this little girl that was kind of dropped at his doorstep, so to speak. And he's trying to find other humans to take her in, which is easier said than done. Like John already mentioned, humans apparently started a war ages ago and were mostly chased away or eaten by the fantasy creatures inhabiting this land. They talk about that kind of matter-of-factly, but that also means that this is a very hostile world to Somali, and Golem is very aware of that and tries to protect her and find her a new home. And so this is basically Terminator 2 meets the Jungle Book, and I fucking love it.
You're not wrong.
Like, the setting is interesting. The look of the show, in my opinion, is fantastic. It's super colorful. The scenery and creature design is creative. The soundtrack is super atmospheric. Somali is adorable. And watching the golem slowly learn to be a father to her is heartwarming. It's done really well, in my opinion. I really like those two characters together. That moment at the end of I think it was the first episode, where she grabs his finger, and And it's just, man, that's good. Like, that's good stuff. A fucking machine that has a heart and learns to become a caring person. That kind of always gets me. I don't know why. But it's done pretty damn well in this show. And I like that the golem is not like this super comfortable looking person. Like, he looks still very machine-like and downright creepy when he opens like the front of his face to reveal his scanning eye thing. There's just this giant lens.
Yeah.
Where he maybe can also shoot lasers from. I don't know. That might happen. But yeah, he seems to be a force to be reckoned with. And yeah, this is maybe another iteration of what also The Mandalorian has been doing for its first season. Like, big protective person with small child traversing a hostile land. But yeah, I kind of love it. I think the setting is up my alley. Like everything else, the characters, I really like it. I hope there's gonna be a plot, but even if that turns out to be something like Girls Last Tour, where they just traverse this land and meet a bunch of people, and you get to learn of the people through their eyes and everything, and what actually happened to the humans, and how the monsters actually live in this world. I'm down for that too. I think this is a super, like, big surprise thing, even though I knew this was a satellite show and it might be up my alley. I wasn't expecting this. And yeah, I really like it. I like it a lot. And yeah, for now, this is a keeper for me. I think I'm going to stick with it. The first episode just left such a strong impression for me that I want to stick with it. I'm just, this kind of fantasy family bullshit is up my alley. So, yeah. I'm all for that. John, what is your final keeper?
Orphen.
There we go. I mean, that was to be expected, but yes. I didn't expect that to be so high up your list. Were you already familiar with the franchise? That
it might be a keeper. I'm not 100% certain of it, but
okay.
I had like a cursory familiarity with Orphen, and when I heard they were doing like a new version, like a new adaptation, I was kind of like, yeah, I guess now's the time to check it out. Because the original anime adaptation aired in 1998. And I've been kind of watching episodes of the older version because, conveniently enough, it's on High Dive, so I can watch the new one on Funimation and the old one on High Dive. To kind of compare and contrast. And oh man, the original sure is a 90s show. Not to say that this isn't either, but I kind of like the presentation and the character designs a bit more in the new one. I don't know. Fans of the older show might be willing to fight me on that, but and it seems like the plot in this new version, even though there's some different details in there, like it's moving at a bit more of a brisk pace, whereas in the original, from what I've seen so far, it's a bit more meandering. Oh, we're going on an adventure. Oh, whereas in this one, it's like, oh, my friend,
right into the action, like no nonsense from beginning. I mean, I noticed that too. It's like right into the fucking plot. Like, holy shit, what's happening?
And they also gave us the preamble and setup for the story that's not present in the original adaptation. Like, we don't know. So the plot is that this kid, Cree Lancelot, what a name, is a wizard in training at this prestigious organization called the Tower of Fangs. One day, one of his friends and classmates, Azali, conducts a magical experiment that goes horribly wrong, transforming her into a fearsome dragon, which is what we don't know. We haven't seen that in the original version. We see Cree Lancelot, who takes up the name Orphen, address the dragon as Azli, but if you don't know that going in, it's like, what's going on? But yeah, when everyone at the Tower of Fangs basically turns against Azli, Cree Lancelot breaks his association with them to try and save his friend. He takes up the name Orphen and goes on a journey to seek a relic called the Sword of Baltanders to aid him in his quest. So it's kind of stock fantasy, but I just never made the time to check it out. So I guess now's the time that there's a new version of the story. So maybe it's a keeper, maybe not. I don't know. I guess I'll see.
I mean, there must be something to it if there have been several adaptations of this already. Like, it's got to be popular for kind of a reason, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, the original show had 2 seasons that were each 2 cours, so it ran. It ran a pretty decent chunk back in the day. And I mean, this is an adaptation of a light novel that's not an isekai. So how about that?
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
Harkening back to the good old days.
Much like the adaptation of Hatena Illusion that we talked about earlier, that was also a light novel that's not an isekai. So shocking that you can do one thing without doing the other. Wow.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can also see a lot of. I honestly don't know off the top of my head which novel came first. Orphen or Slayers, but you can see that there's definite inspiration probably from one to the other, whichever order it may be. I will say that in the new version, the spell casting looks a lot neater because, when the characters cast their spells, there's, the little animated spell circle effects that I'm a complete sucker for. Whereas in the original, it's just like, I'm going to shoot this blast out of my hand, and it's like, all right, okay. And I mean, the original was animated by J.C. Staff, so take that for what you will. But this new one is animated by Dean, and so far, it's looked surprisingly good.
Well, their budget had to go somewhere because it sure as hell didn't go into Nanatsu no Taizai Season 3.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I assume we will talk about that when the time comes.
Yeah, maybe we will.
But yeah, I mean, for now, it looks good enough to keep me on the hook. And, I'm curious enough to watch both versions to compare and contrast them. So, that's my take. Orphen is a tentative keeper. So
right.
You have one last keeper. What should it be?
I'm looking forward to hearing more about Orphen then down the road. Yeah, my last keeper is probably no surprise for anyone who's paid attention to the premieres, like what is actually airing. It's, of course, Haikyu Season 4. Like, come on, people. It's one of my favorite sports anime in recent years.
Ah, yes, the volleyball anime.
Yes, the volleyball anime. The volleyball anime to end all volleyball anime, because nothing can surpass it. Nothing will be able to surpass it. I reviewed kind of the first 3 seasons, more the 3rd season than anything else on our show, because it was the most recent one at that time. But yeah, sung its praises for quite a while. And it's been quite a while since that 3rd season, so I'm really happy that we're back. And man, Haikyu! Oh shit! I mean, we have a new director and chief animation director, so that's switching things up a bit. Maybe the character designs have been changed a bit to look more like how they do in the manga. But aside from that, it feels like the show kind of never went away. It basically picks up immediately in the epilogue of season 3, which was like the last 5 minutes or something. That's where season 4 begins. Just catching us up again with what was happening. Because Kageyama, one of our 2 main characters, has been invited to a national training camp that is picking out possible players for the U19, so under 19 years old Olympics. And of course, because he doesn't want to be left behind, our other main character, Hinata, sneaks into a training camp for first years in the Miyagi prefecture, promptly being relegated to the role of a ball boy, but determined to show that his worth is not dependent on Kageyama. Because for now, they have been working together as a team, and that has been their strength. So now they have to show that they can stand on their own and evolve on their own. Yeah, I can't wait. I love Haikyu so much. I think the first 3 seasons is one of the best things that Production IG has ever done. It looks fantastic. It sounds fantastic. The music is amazing. The characters are amazing. Like, there are so many great great moments, funny moments. The humor is really good in that show. And the matches, of course, are fantastic. The third season alone, which is like this big 10-episode long match against this really strong school that has been building, that the show has been building up towards, is just fucking a showstopper, like a thrill ride, a nail biter. It's amazing. I've recently rewatched that season and it's fucking great. And yeah, I can only hope that season 4 is going to be just as good. I mean, it starts with a training camp, so yeah, we'll see how long that goes. That's always the thing. If those last too long, they can become a bit tedious in terms of what the pace, in terms of the pacing of the show. But on the horizon are the fucking nationals, like the fucking spring national tournament and the destined confrontation between the crows and the cats.
Oh.
The battle of the dumpster will be resumed. And the battle at the dumpster, sorry. But this will ring a bell for no one who hasn't watched the show. But they, like to our main sports team, Karasuno, have like these rivals, or this other school that they, Nekoma, that they had a rivalry with before Karasuno kind of fell from grace and didn't do anything really good for a couple of years. And now, since Karasuno's back, with our two main characters and a strong team, they're probably gonna face off against Nekoma in the finale of the Nationals. And I can't fucking wait, because all those teams are great. They're populated with great characters, and of course there are other teams that are great too. I can't wait to learn more about those we haven't met yet. And yeah, Haikyu. If you like sports anime or have ever like considered checking out a sports anime, this is the show to go to. And that's why it's my keeper. I cannot wait to watch this season of Haikyu, more Haikyu. I love this show to death. And I'm glad it came back, because I wasn't sure it would, because it took quite a while after season 3 aired. So yeah, now it's back in full force, and I couldn't be happier. Also, don't miss out on the 2-part special, Earth versus Air and the Ball's Path, which highlights 2 matches of Karasuno's rivals Nekoma, like I mentioned, and how they qualified for the nationals and everything. And those are also really good, and all of that is on Crunchyroll, so it's no problem. Highly recommended. And I can't wait to talk more about it in the review that will eventually happen. But for now, that's our sneak peek for winter 2020. And we're gonna move right into our first review of fall season 2019 right now. In the year 1002, a young boy named Thorfinn is living in a small village in Iceland together with his family. His dreams of seeing the world are spurred on by one of his father's seafaring friends, who tells wondrous stories about a paradise called Vinland, far to the west across the ocean. However, Thorfinn's peaceful days are soon brought to an abrupt end when his father Thors is revealed to be one of the famous Jomsviking warriors and is recruited back into their ranks to join an ongoing invasion of England. Thorfinn, enthralled by his father's past, decides to hitch a ride on his father's boat and is soon thrust into a whirlwind of tragedy, death, and never-ending violence that will change his innocent young life forever. The journey that now lies ahead of him will have him travel across many lands, meet many different people, both enemies and compatriots alike, and will reveal the true horror of war and the many faces of humanity. So Vinland Saga is based on a manga by Makoto Yukimura, and that manga started in 2005. It's now counting 23 volumes and is still running. Yukimura also made For Our Farewell Is Near, which I haven't checked out, but his other work, besides Vinland Saga, I'm familiar with, and that is Planetes. At least the anime adaptation of that, which I liked a lot, until the last 2 episodes. Probably one of the best examples of how a shitty ending can ruin an entire series for you in retrospect. At least it did for me. If I remember correctly, however, the anime diverges from the manga at a certain point, so I wonder if I would like the manga ending more if I checked it out. I can't tell, because I haven't read it. But Vinland Saga is actually one of the rare cases on this show where I had read quite a lot of the manga before watching the anime version. It doesn't happen too often. Since I read basically all of the story that gets adapted for these first 24 episodes. Just by coincidence, and also because it makes sense to end the first season at that point in the story, I guess. Episode 24 basically ends exactly where I stopped reading the manga, and decided I would wait for an anime adaptation to experience the rest of the story, however long it may take. Because I loved it up to that point and wanted to see the rest first time, enriched by great presentation. And I had to wait a long time, about 14 years. But I got my wishes fulfilled, and then some. Vinland Saga Season 1 is produced by WIT, the studio what did a little series called Attack on Titan. And if they have proven anything with that anime, then that they can deliver a good violent spectacle. And so naturally, they do that in this show as well. The battle scenes are spectacular and also incredibly violent and gory. Lots of flying limbs and heads, people getting stabbed and mangled left and right. This is a war epic after all, so this is par for the course for them. But what struck me even more were the beautiful quiet scenes in the show. Get these close, incredible soft-lit shots of detailed line work and shading on the faces, on the hands, on the clothing. Incredibly colorful and varied backgrounds. Like, there's so many great, almost naturalistic shots of the British countryside. The scenery shots are all gorgeous and establish a thick atmosphere, be it foggy woods or azure currents between jagged mountain passes. Nature has never looked as pretty in anime as in this show, in my opinion. John, what did you think about the artwork, with, like the scenery in general in that show, and how it was portrayed?
The landscapes and the attention to micro details were just incredible. This show delivered on just having these breathtaking vistas in so many parts. It just, oh man, it was really good, really strong backdrops, to work with. And of course, the stuff happening at the front of the frame is pretty good too, which, we'll get to.
Yeah. I wonder how much of the backdrops is CG stuff. I wonder how much is in there and how much is hand-drawn, because I honestly couldn't tell.
Yeah.
I mean, some of that had to be, just in terms of how the camera moves and everything, so I wonder. But it feels like, if there is both in that, it feels like seamlessly interwoven with each other. It's really great stuff. Like you said, the attention to detail is ridiculous. Like, Vinland Saga's artwork in general is very line-heavy and rich in detail in the manga. So the fact that Studio WIT is able, or was able, to adapt this so faithfully with such a consistent level of high animation quality and art detail is remarkable, in my opinion. I did not expect that. To keep this level of quality for 24 episodes. And it also kind of makes a mockery of people who said you can't adapt Berserk faithfully without turning it into a CG abomination because of all the detailed artwork. You just need capable people at the helm. And Studio WIT has a lot of capable people, apparently. Mm-hmm. Vinland Saga shows that, without question. And speaking of CG, not abominations, there's some in here. But aside from a few wonky side character animations and massive battle scenes where they go for numbers instead of detail and quality, all of it looks incredibly good, in my opinion. It felt like someone is trying to prove to me that CG in anime can be done right. First we had Kimetsu no Yaiba, now this, and also Beastars we're going to talk about later down the road. But man, it's hey, we heard this guy's talking shit about our CG. Let's show that fucker. And yeah, it's crazy. Vinland Saga, I mean, there was already CG in Attack on Titan, and I wasn't too keen on some of that. I thought the Colossal Titan CG looked really wonky in parts and felt too weightless. Yeah. But I never really got the feeling here that there was something like that in there. Like I said, small side characters where it's bad scenes and you get, a bit stiff movement here and there and lack of details, but it never sticks out really. And yeah, The tracking shots, like in and outside of the battles, the fight choreography, the scenery, the backdrops, the fucking water, everything looks amazing in the show. And that includes the CG. Because, it's just used incredibly well for these kind of scenes. Especially the tracking shots, especially the fight scenes. It shouldn't be much of a surprise that the CG is used damn well in the series if you take a look at the director of the show, because Shuhei Yabuta mostly was responsible for 3D CG animation and directions before this. In Attack on Titan, in Overlord, Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans, Jormungand, High School of the Dead. He also directed Inuyashiki, a series I reviewed and did not like, and the CG in many of those series definitely had its rough spots, like I said before, Attack on Titan, the Colossal Titan, didn't like that. But most of them at least knew how to make use of the camera for action scenes with CG characters in it. And unlike Inuyashiki, for example, this is pretty much the only situation where Vinland Saga uses close-up single character CG. Pretty much everything else, scenes with a lot of people aside, is traditionally animated. All the scenes with dialogue, all the scenes where there's focus on the character interaction, on the drama, on the emotional moments, on philosophical discussions or anything like that. That's always traditionally animated. Where the CG comes in, it's for, like, if the show wants to show you a gorgeous tracking shot over the British landscape, to show you how vast it is, how vast the sea is that they travel on, showing you a riveting fight scene with great choreography, showing that to you from all sides, like having the camera constantly panning around the characters while they are moving very fluidly. So this is probably the most effective use of CG I've seen in a while. Make a few of the shots in the fight CG to be able to move the camera in interesting ways and save some money on the big battle scenes with many kind of same looking people in it. That's a very good approach in my opinion that doesn't feel like the CG is overbearing, but it also gets the most out of it that you can get. It's pretty damn good in my opinion. And like I said, the CG in the fight scenes is so fluid that it never sticks out like a sore thumb, as it did for me in Dorohedoro, for example. It's not on the level of Demon Slayer CG, for sure, but I mean, what is? So, yeah, I liked it. I think just in general, the animation, the art design, and even the CG, everything in the show comes together and stays on a pretty high, consistent level. John, what did you think about the CG and how it was used?
I thought, it was pretty well utilized because it seemed for the most part pretty seamless. I mean, except for, like you said, big crowd shots where they're just trying to go for numbers. But other than that, I mean, I think I really felt like I had to really look in order to make the distinction on what was going on with, some of the things they were doing with the CG. So, I mean, it didn't stick out to me in a negative way at all. So,
yeah. I think the most impressive thing is probably the very first battle scene with Thors and Torkel just raiding those ships. Like the very first episode, I think that's almost full CG. And there's so much camera movement and so much action. It looks great. So, yeah, that's an indicator for the things to come. And the show just keeps on fucking going and becomes better and better, in my opinion. The soundtrack is also great. Yutaka Yamada, who also did the music for Majestic Prince and Tokyo Ghoul, delivers like some riveting orchestrations for the fights. Very drum heavy, something you might subconsciously associate with Vikings and wars, I guess. And beautiful string and piano arrangements for the quiet, somber moments. It effortlessly switches between atmospheric and epic as fuck, in my opinion. Just whenever it needs, whatever it needs to be, it will be. The OPs and EDs are also great. Though I gotta say, even for anime OP standards, the second OP is spoilery as fuck.
Yeah, a little bit.
Right? I mean, Studio Witch just doesn't give a shit, because Attack on Titan always had incredibly spoilery OPs, and they continue that trend with Vinland Saga, apparently. I can't say I'm too fond of that, just for first-time viewers.
I mean, I guess if you don't know what you're looking for, it's fine, but,
But in hindsight, it's like, oh, man, they sure weren't hiding what's gonna happen in that show. and with the characters and everything. So,
Were you saying at one point that you weren't so much big on that Man with a Mission song?
I'm not. It grew on me, but
Okay.
it's definitely not one of my favorite of theirs.
Because I was really super into Dark Crow. The first intro was a little too screamy for me.
Okay, I like the thing. Okay, I can understand that, and I'm not into screamo metal myself that much, but it really resonated with me in terms of how well it. Just in terms of, I didn't look at the lyrics. I don't know. Well, partially, but it really felt like the music really brought across, really conveyed really well the hatred and anger that just tears up Orphen from the inside.
Yeah, that's true.
So it was really, really well in that regard. And the second OP, by Man with a Mission, is fine, but it feels more like of a broad, fun. Hey, here, Viking action shit is happening. Here, war, not fun, but you know what I mean, right?
Well, I mean, it's also a song of rebellion because it's like, keep your crown, I'll take you down.
Yeah,
it's part of the lyrics.
I guess that more relates to Canute's story then, so it fits. But I just felt the first OP had more of a raw feeling to it, like laying Thorfinn's inner turmoil bare for everyone to experience with that OP. So I guess that's why it grabbed me more, because I already know that it was relating to him, and I knew where his story was going from the manga. So
I mean, I guess when you look at it from a thematic standpoint, it works better like that. I don't know, from a musical standpoint.
Yeah, sure.
Second one better.
Yeah,
shrug.
I totally get that. Yeah. So, but hey. That's great. Like, if the OPs and EDs are not just in there for like, hey, here's some music with anime scenes, but also, hey, this actually is related to the fucking story of the show. So, and the characters. So, good job picking out these songs there. And the endings are also great. The first ED especially works incredibly well as a haunting exclamation point after some of the more disturbing episodes, in my opinion. When, you end on a really, really horrifying scene, and then those haunting vocals kick in, and like, man, there were certain episodes where I was just like, holy fuck, and I already knew what was gonna happen, but the show still got me because the presentation is so fucking great in every aspect. But yeah, combine all of what we just talked about, and you have a kick-ass presentation pretty much for the entirety of the show, with only a few rough spots sprinkled in between that are barely noticeable. So, besides the presentation, what does Vinland Saga have to offer? Story-wise, this is kind of an underused setting. I can't even remember if there ever was a Viking, if we ever had a Viking anime before.
Nothing springs to mind.
Yeah, and at least not in recent years. And I mean, we had war epics, be it fantasy or more realistic things, like we had Angolmois, kinda. I reviewed that. We had an adaptation of Heroic Legend of Arslan. So, anime does do war stuff, but this feels really, in terms of how it's portrayed, because, this is about, the show is basically a very loose chronicle of the Danish-Saxon War. A war I'm not really familiar with, and have to admit I haven't read up on yet. That might change, though, because the show definitely got me interested in it. Again, I wanted to check up on it after reading the prologue in the manga, but, I'm also kind of scared because there are some people in the show that really existed in real life, and I kind of don't know. That sounds weird because, you should already know this about this and the occurrences because it's history, but I kind of don't want to spoil on their fate.
Well, I mean,
like, what happens? I mean, do all of them die? But
yeah, I mean, King Svein and his son Canute, were actual people.
Yes,
and I did a little bit of reading on them on the side, just see what lines up and what doesn't, and obviously there's embellishments.
Yeah, sure,
but it's still sort of neat to see something that don't think has been given a lot of attention in even outside of anime, that much of a look like this. So, it was cool to have this like little like vignette in history given a spotlight.
Yeah. And have so much care put into that. It's really great.
It's kind of like with Golden Kamui. Who fucking talks about the Russo-Japanese War?
Yeah, exactly. And immediately it's like, hey, we have never seen this before in anime form, so it's immediately more interesting than, like, fucking 50% of the shows that are airing right now because they're all fucking isekai trash. So this is cool. And I really want to check out, like, read up at least the Wikipedia article for the war, because I want to know how accurate some of the key moments are that relate to some of the characters that really existed, like you mentioned, Canute and King Swain. And I mean, it's historical fiction for sure. There are going to be so much liberties. I don't know if they actually put the sentence like, this is based on a true story in front of the show. But the show teaches us a few things about the history of parts of Europe, definitely. There's some, hey, here, this happened at that time, and this at that time, and this is where this took place. But I think some of that should probably be taken with a grain of salt, because I'm pretty sure the show takes a lot of liberty. I don't want to say that Yukimura didn't do his research, because I'm pretty sure he did. But still, it's like, okay, this is still historical fiction. So yeah, but that's what the show is about, basically. It's showing us, I don't know if it's exactly the beginning, because the invasion of Britain is already underway, but I guess since this is the prologue, it's showing us a part of that war and what that leads to in regards to King Sweyn, who is the king of Denmark. And it's showing us the events of this through the eyes of, our main characters. Thorfinn, to an extent, Thor's his father, who was one of the famous Joms Vikings, and a few other characters. I think Thorfinn is... We should maybe start with Thorfinn, even though this is not really his season, in my opinion. But it starts with him, definitely. It's like he's led a very sheltered, protected life. He hasn't any experience with war, except for, child's play with the other kids from the village. But, he's enamored when he learns that his father was a strong warrior and everything, and wants to see his father fight and all that shit, and wants to accompany him and wants to become as strong as his father. But he has no idea what war actually means. And so once he gets to experience that shit firsthand in the worst possible way, he's obviously traumatized. And there are a bunch of moments that make you feel for Thorfinn, but I still feel like he is kind of a one-note character for this first season. Like, he has two phases, kind of. Like, in the first, he's the child, and once, shit happens, we make a time jump, and then we see him as this very, very angry teen who is out for revenge and everything, and just basically fights on the battlefield to achieve his goal. He's very grumpy. He pretty much hates all other people and try to talk to him. He doesn't really like anyone. Well, he later has a connection with one of the other characters, with Canute, but that happens much later on, and it's kind of superficial. He still doesn't like him, but they build up kind of a relationship. I don't want to go into too much detail there, because this is still a first season review. But aside from that, Thorfinn is basically like only intent on having like a duel to the death with the guy who takes him in, Ashalat, because he has his reasons. And that's basically what his entire character is for this first season. And that sounds kind of boring, and it would be probably if there weren't so many other cool characters in this and so many more interesting things. I think if the first season was just focused on Thorfinn, this show might not be as strong as it is. How did you feel about that, John?
Yeah, I mean, if it was just raw grr, I want revenge, it would have been like...
It would have been Shield Hero.
Yeah. But, I mean, there's a lot of other shit that's happening around him, and a lot of other interesting characters that are there to help supplement the story, with, I don't want to say side stuff, because Thorfinn Thorfinn trying to get his revenge, even though it is like the main plot thread, isn't really, like you said, isn't really like the focus.
No.
So it's kind of good that there's other things going on, because otherwise, much like the plot when we talked about Demon Slayer, if there weren't other things going on, this would probably be a really by the numbers sort of ho-hum show.
Yeah, if this was just Thorfinn's story, this would work, because up till pretty much the end, pretty much anyone else of the main players is more interesting than him. Like, once he becomes this revenge-driven hate machine, he's also very easily manipulated, like this muscle for Ashelard, who, you know, is much smarter than him and plays him like a fiddle, kind of. And that also makes him come across as really dumb and like this not petulant child. He has his reason. He has a very good reason for being so fucking angry. Don't get me wrong. I really feel for him. But it's like he doesn't, up to the very end, he doesn't grow beyond that.
He can't see the forest for the trees, as it were.
Yes, but now, at the very end of the season, the way is paid for that to change. Like, there are important key moments in the beginning of the season that are very strong and definitely make you feel for him, especially when he's, like, still a little kid. Some bad things happen to him that is really harrowing. But at the end, there is this scene where he finally contemplates all he has been doing so far and realizes that all his suffering was kind of pointless, and it's damn near heartbreaking. And the direction is incredibly good here, because it shows his journey and personal hell so far in reverse. And like the final flashback scene, we see him as an angry and scared little boy. It's so perfectly framed, and immediately knows why he is the main, makes you realize why he is the main character and where he's probably gonna go from here. And there's also this very important scene where in the later part of the series he meets again with a friend of his father's who got him like interested in the story of Vinland, that paradise that is on the other side of the ocean, which, by the way, of course they're talking about America, the US, don't, you know, that's pretty clear to me, because that the Vikings already were the first ones kind of who got onto that land. So that's probably that. So when Leif, the sailor, talks about how there are no slaves there, I had to sarcastically chuckle a bit.
Just skip forward a few hundred years, then you'll find them.
There's no slavery in Vinland. I'm like, give it time. But yeah, that cynical aside. But yeah, when he meets Leif later in the story again, who offers to take him home, and Thorfinn rejects that, because if he doesn't fulfill the thing he sees as his mission at that point first, then all the things he endured were entirely pointless in Thorfinn's eyes. And until a final sobering duel with Ashelard, he just can't face that possibility, which is gut-wrenching. Like, he is just lying to himself constantly. He could have a better life, but he is so fixated on his revenge, or was so fixated on revenge, that now he can't just go back on that. That he just can't realize, can't just admit that, like, okay, this is not doing anything for anyone. I have to get past this for me, like, for my soul, for me to get better.
Pride is a hell of a thing, man.
Yeah, and this is how you do a good revenge story. I'm looking at you, Shield Hero, again! Like, actual character depth, actual weight behind the decisions of the people in the story. Like, this is so important. And in Vinland Saga is one of the best examples to bring a good revenge story to paper, in my opinion. Like, it starts with a very simple premise and makes you like feel at the beginning for the character, and then you see him being like this very single-minded, narrow-minded person who just fucking angry, hate, rage all the time, and you kind of start to lose, you know, your attachment to him. And then, at the very end, there comes a very important moment where it's all brought back to you and all brought back to him, and you realize what journey that character has been going through and what his issues were. And then you're like, okay, I get it now. I understand that character. I I maybe needed a nudge, but now I really get it. And I want to see where that character grows from here on out. And chapeau to fucking Vinland Saga to just, even though I had already watched that, read that thing, it got me again. It got me fucking again because it's such a good, powerful scene. And the show is fucking full of that. I mean, it's great that our main character, at least at the very end and at the beginning, of course, is giving such an important moment. But like I said, aside from those two moments, this is not really Thorfinn's season. But before we get to whose season this actually is, let's talk about the other great characters and maybe also a bit more of the plot. We said that this is, a war story. I liked that the series is not afraid to show us that a bunch of our main characters are not good people. Like Vikings are not good people.
No.
And the show often reminds us of that. Like Thorfinn tries to hold onto his humanity. There are many scenes where you get the feeling that he's trying to be a better person than the rest of the crew that he's involved with. But these were different times, and a lot of innocent people get killed, and that is normalcy. Those are raids. Like, people are getting robbed, people are getting killed, women are getting raped all the time. And the series doesn't really revel in the imagery, like, of innocents being slaughtered, but also doesn't ignore that fact either. It's not like, hey, these were fun Viking times all the time. I mean, you see the Vikings, like, you see them having fun with each other and joking around. But there's a scene where you see, like, the people in the village just being fucking obliterated by them. And I'm really happy that the show doesn't black that out, doesn't ignore that fact, and just says, like, hey, this is how it was. You must decide if you can still attach yourself to some of your characters regardless. Because those were the times. This is how it went. And a lot of innocent people were treated very badly in those times. And I like that too. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's gut-wrenching, it's harrowing to look at, partially. There are a lot of stomach-turning scenes when it comes to the violence and how innocent people are treated in the show. But, like I said, I feel the show is always treating those events with a kind of respect and not just reveling in the sheer brutality and being like, hey, isn't this awesome? I mean, it does that too, but that's mostly happening in the battle scenes where it's warrior against warrior and not when it's, hey, here's all these innocent people, let's fucking kill them all and pillage everything here. So, yeah, I'm glad that didn't happen. John, how did you feel about how the show treated that kind of part of history?
I feel like it would be really sort of short-sighted to portray it as anything but what it actually was. Because if it was like, yeah, just going out raiding with my Viking bros, that would be kind of like really ignoring a lot of the really bad shit that they did. So, the fact that they didn't, gloss over that, yeah, there are these innocent people, yeah, they're robbing them and burning down their living space and killing them and raping the women. And it's like, don't forget that that's something that happened. Vikings went around doing horrible things to have fun, yes, and to be, swords for hire, depending on how you want to look at that.
They wanted to be strong warriors. They wanted to reach recognition and maybe be allowed to go to Valhalla, I guess. So
yeah.
That was part of the deal. But it was just like, it was a warrior's ethos. It was like, hey, fucking fighting, fighting and fucking and killing and all that good stuff and getting money. And that's all that mattered. And the show talks about that. It shows us the different attitudes of the people who lived at that time and their worldview. And we get to see that there are like a lot of small conversations between the most minor characters. For example, between Ashalat's men and the priest they later have captured. And those give the story a lot of texture, in my opinion. And like I said, make you see the world through their eyes and through the eyes of the people who lived back then. At the same time, through that method, the show has a lot of interesting conversations about things like war, things like love, things like honor, things like pacifism. the priest, for example, thinks the love of parents for a child is not real love, but discrimination, which is a really interesting approach because it's not love that is offered to all people equally. So to him, that is not real love. And that makes sense because the Christian ideal is love thy neighbor, but this is not how humans work, and the priest knows this. So maybe that's why he's drunk all the time and depressed. And he also said that death is love because it turns a selfish person into a selfless corpse that gives back to the world. You know, little scenes like that, little conversations like that, and little thought exercises like that are in this show, which you wouldn't expect from a fucking show about a Viking war. That's crazy to me. Like, little interesting discussions like that just talk about, you know, little philosophical things, philosophical aspects of life. And there's a bunch of that stuff in there. Especially interesting is one of the other characters kind of aligns with that worldview. He's also taught by the priest and everything, and that's Canute, the young prince of Denmark, I guess. One of King Sweyn's sons. An unloved son, because he's kind of weak. He's like this sheltered, spoiled brat. At least that's how he comes across in the beginning. He's very pretty. He has been brought up in a protected home, had everything he ever wanted, I guess, at least from the outside perspective. And he comes across as weak and scared and is protected by this person, this guy Ragnar, who was always next to him and also his best friend and kind of father figure that becomes important later on in the show. And you feel like that he is very soft-spoken. He doesn't act like his father, like very confident, and it feels like he doesn't know where his place in the world is and everything. And he, in the beginning, he even just has Ragnar speak for him all the time. And then Thorfinn pops up and manages to really push Canute's buttons and actually gets him angry enough to open up. And that's what I meant earlier when I said that those characters form kind of a connection. They don't like each other really, but they somehow managed to evolve each other in a way. Like they clash, they butt heads, they clash against each other because of their upbringing and their ideologies and whatever, and thus help each other become maybe better people or more open people, and, you know, have their character develop. And that's great. And yeah, Canute is really interesting because, like I said, he grew up in a difficult household. Cooking is his hobby, but everyone told him, you're the son of a king, don't act like a slave. So he's not allowed to do that when his father is around. He made his father really angry when he did that. And in the beginning, he lashes out against the priest when the priest doubts God in the face of all the horrors, because to Canute, that would mean doubting his own father, who has kind of like this God status in his eyes, and which would, at this point in time, challenge his view on the world too much for him to bear. Which is kind of an interesting connection to Thorfinn's story, who also can't accept Leif's invitation to return back home with him to the village, or then travel to Vinland, because that would also challenge his view on the world too much at that point in time. So again, interesting connection between those two characters. And then, because Canute is forced to travel with Askeladd and Thorfinn, and they're hunted by another character, which we will get to, because he's one of my favorites, is forced to challenge his own view of the world. Again, pretty much the same that happened to Thorfinn through tragedy and to the horrors of war and everything. I kind of want to talk about where Canute is going, why Canute is doing what he's doing in the end, but I don't want to give it away. So Canute was a really interesting character. He goes some very interesting places, especially later on in the show. And I liked him a lot, which I didn't expect when I first met him. Like, the first time I met him in the manga, I was like, oh god, what fucking bitch-ass prince. But yeah, he's really cool. Who's also really cool is Torkel, who is probably... wouldn't even call him a comedic relief. There are other characters in the show that fit that, but he kind of is. He's like this hulking giant who is only in it for the fight. And yeah, pretty much That's all. He just loves to fight, loves to go to war, he loves to fight strong opponents, so much so that he lets people just get away because he wants to fight them another day. He's just a typical warrior archetype, and he's fucking great. And every time he's in a battle, it's crazy shit. And he just delivers some much-needed levity in what is otherwise a very grim tale. And he's also not dumb. He's smart enough to use his opponent's prides against them. And when he goes wild in battle, it's a sight to behold. So he's a super entertaining character, in my opinion. And the voice casting for him is pitch perfect. Like Akio Osuka as his best, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Just
you could tell he had a lot of fun playing the character.
Indeed. Like there's the fun he has with that role is oozing from every line. Every line in this show he has. And there's so many great moments with Torkel. Like he no-sells getting 2 of his fingers cut off. He Shoryuken's a fucking horse.
Like, oh my god, he does. I forgot.
Right? Torkel is amazing. I don't know, John, what did you think about Torkel? And about Canute, right? How did you feel about those 2 side characters?
All right, well, starting with Canute, I think I had the same feeling as you when they brought him in. It was kind of like, who's this kid? He's whatever, because he's just very demure, very...
He feels a bit posh in the beginning.
I guess that's a good best word to use. Yeah. I don't know.
Not necessarily like he's like his third person in the very beginning, but more so that he's kind of prideful because like, hey, I'm a prince and you have to treat me with respect. That's how he comes across in the beginning until you learn, that he had a difficult upbringing and everything. But yeah, you're right. In the beginning, definitely, it's like, oh god, I don't think I would like this character.
It comes across very high-strung, I think is a good way to describe it. Yeah. And just sort of like, all right. But then, things happen, which we'll talk about. But, and then Torkel, I mean, he's great. He's just there to, in spite of being a crazy warmonger, which, in every sense is a big negative. You just get the sense that he's just like, yeah, I just want to fight you. But he's not stupid about it. Like, he's like, what if Goku, but not dumb? I feel like it's a good way to describe him.
He's actually a good war tactician. Which you wouldn't believe when you see him, act in his natural way and his natural habitat. He's just he loves to fight. That's all there is to him. But he is pretty damn smart. So, yeah.
Yeah. He's got enough smarts to know how to swing a fight in his favor and how to, like you said, emotionally manipulate his opponents. Yeah. So, Torkel is, he comes across as he should be like a very one-dimensional character, but he's not, and I appreciate that a lot.
And because he's so entertaining, it's easy to forget that he's also one of the Vikings, and he has probably done a lot of bad things. So I mean, they don't really show it in the show aside from him killing a bunch of the other warriors. I don't remember them showing him killing any innocents or stuff like that. Maybe there's a reason for that, because they want to keep his character kind of endearing and entertaining. It's kind of a cheat, but they don't do that with another character. But I guess you can overlook that for him because he's supposed to be more, the entertaining comedic relief. But you feel there's also some depth to him, especially in a scene later that he has with Ashalat and Canute at the very end of the season. But yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah, I'll talk quick about the character I think this first season is really about, or whose story this first season really is. I think this season is Ashalat's season. I think this is his story. He starts out he is this very intelligent fighter. And he really, more so than Torkel, he knows how to manipulate everyone around him. He is this fucking super smart battle tactician. He's also a very capable fighter, don't get me wrong, but he knows how to play the people around him and to make them work for him Thorfinn more than anyone else. For example, all his duels with Thorfinn, he is aware that at some point Thorfinn has become a kind of already too formidable for him to survive their duel unscathed. Like if they just go one toe-to-toe fairly, in a fair manner. So he makes fun of Thorfinn's dad to make him lose his control and make mistakes, and it works like a charm every time. And that's also one of the things that becomes very important in the key scene later on. But he has a very somber, cynical view of the world, which you maybe wouldn't expect when you see him, because he comes across as very snarky already in the beginning, but he doesn't really feel lost. But the more time you spend with him, you feel like, yeah, he might have a mission in this world, but this all seems like kind of maybe a joke to him at some point. At the same time, he comes across as pretty empathetic, just judging from a lot of the comments he makes. Something, the show brings up the topic of slavery a lot. There is the physical aspect to that, just slaves being sold in the market. But there's also the, theoretical side to it, or philosophical side to it. And Ashala talks about that, where he says, we are all slaves to something. And that is very much reflected throughout the entirety of the show. Like, each of the character in the show is a slave to one thing. Be it ambition, be it Thorfinn with his revenge thing, and the weights that puts on his shoulders for pretty much his entire childhood and his teenage life. Canute with his upbringing and feeling like he owes something to his father, or he has to live up to a certain ideal as a prince. And Ashalat, of course, because of many different things, also his upbringings and his view on the world, his view on Vikings itself, which is also very interesting. So the fact that he utters that phrase and that he already knows what all the other characters basically are about makes him kind of the smartest guy and the most sympathetic guy in the show. Of course, it's all the more problematic what he decides to do with that knowledge. And there's this episode 14 is really beautiful, like breathtakingly beautiful in terms of its presentation, and endlessly horrifying at the same time. And if you still have considered Ashalat and his men redeemable at this point, you might feel differently after that episode. So having a character say something like that and be empathetic and also be, let's be real, kind of a father figure to Thorfinn, if you look closely at their relationship, be also like this really bad person and do a lot of really bad things, conjures up some very complicated feelings while you watch it, because there are a bunch of scenes where you're rooting for Ashalat, you're feeling for him, you understand him, but there are also a bunch of scenes where you're like, man, you are such a fucking piece of shit. You are a really bad person.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely see that everything is a means to an end for Ashalat. So, yes. I mean, it doesn't make his decisions right, but, it sort of colors him a little bit differently, I think.
Yes, definitely. And it makes him a very complex and interesting character, very complicated character. More complicated than I, again, expected from a series like this. We don't get filled in on all the different aspects of the characters right from the beginning. He's kind of a riddle wrapped in an enigma at the very beginning. And slowly we learn more about his inner workings, about his background, where he comes from, what his motives are, how he sees different people in the show, and how they relate to him and everything. And his character is slowly more and more developed, very carefully and very interestingly. And that's probably why he is the most interesting character, and why the entirety of the season feels like it's hinging on him doing what he does. And like he's moving the plot forward, he's bringing the characters together that need to come together, and he's the guy who does all the maneuvering and everything, and he is the one who kind of sees every character in the show for what they are to an extent. So I think he's the linchpin. He's the most important character here and has the most complete character arc. I think by the end of this first season, his character arc is pretty much complete, and it feels like the logical conclusion to what he has been doing and to how he sees the world and acting on his beliefs. You couldn't ask for anything more when it comes to a character. Like having like this really complete character arc from beginning to end that makes you not maybe always like agree with the character or even like the character, but always understand where he's coming from, and then get the satisfying feeling that of that character journey being really well structured and really well written and coming together in the very end. And I think that's the case for Ashalat. I don't know, how did you feel about him?
No, I agree entirely. Like I think the best word to describe him, and you said it before, was complex. That was something that I actually wrote down as well. So, mind meld. But yeah, no. His arc is, I mean, it's this season. This season is his story. It's his arc. You know, it's the culmination of all of his decisions and, you know, I guess you could call them relationships along the way, because, you know, make no mistake that Ashalad is probably not someone you could be best friends with. No. But, you know, he has his sights on very specific things, and, you know, if he has to step on someone to get there, I mean, he'll do it. We know he'll do it. We see that. So seeing, you know, the culmination of his story, it presents, you know, an interesting perspective of the character that you don't get at first.
Yes, exactly. He comes across as like this kind of, you know, villainish character. I mean, you kind of can, especially when it comes to his relationship with Orphen, that there's more to it than seems to be on the outside. You're always wondering, like, especially when they duel, you get a feeling like, is he maybe actually caring for Orphen or not?
Yeah.
Are there kind of like father-son feelings between them? You know, that's mutual. You're wondering if Orphen has the same. I mean, that gets developed later on or made more clear later on. But right in the beginning, you're wondering, okay, maybe he's this one-sided villain. You see him do commit a lot of atrocities, definitely war crimes, like a bunch of bad shit. But at the same time, you just get this. You see the world through his eyes. You get this very sobering view. And again, that's the most interesting. None of these characters really stand for themselves. And his worldview is pretty much the complete opposite to what Canute's worldview becomes later. Ashalat has, like I said, a very cynical view in the world. He has kind of accepted what world he lives in, and he uses every tool in this world, in this horrible world, to live the best life he can and achieve his goal. He doesn't think the world can be changed. He has made his peace, so to speak, with this world being shitty, and that he has no chance of changing it. He might at one point have seen it like that, but he has experienced some things that made him think that, and he has seen enough of war and everything that he has this very cynical approach to the whole thing, and has just become part of that world. So, yeah, he's hard to like in the beginning, but the more you spend time with him, you get the feeling that there's a lot more to it, and you start to understand him. Like I said, you might or might not become attached to him, but I still think he's the most interesting character aside from Canute in this first season. And Orphen might become more interesting in the coming seasons. Like I said, I don't know. I've only read up to this point, but I really like what they did with Ashalat. I think he's the best character in this first season, without a doubt. Complex, yes. Complicated, definitely. Hard to love, most certainly, but the most interesting one, without a doubt. Yeah, and I also think the ending of this season is perfect. I think it ends on a perfect note. Considering this is a prologue to the actual story, so to speak, it just says at the end of prologue.
Yeah, that's the final episode name.
Yeah, it's like you had 24 episodes and you just finished the prologue. Wow. But yeah, it's it ends on a perfect note because it's like pretty much a perfect character story. Like, if not only Arshalat, it's definitely the relationship between Arshalat and Thorfinn, and that is brought to a logical conclusion, and is, my opinion, is incredibly satisfying and well written and well realized. And I love the fuck out of these 24 episodes. I think this is a fucking stellar adaptation. I couldn't have asked for more, even though I knew the story. I mean, it's been ages since I read it, so I didn't remember. I couldn't remember all the details, but I remembered the key moments. I remembered the ending, for example, or where the season ended, what happens there, and the beginning, and some spots in between. But Studio Wit did such a great job at bringing that stuff, the most important moments and everything in between, from the pages to the screen, and then enriching it with this fucking amazing presentation and great voice work and everything. I don't know if there maybe weren't some very small rough spots in the animation here and there, like that are barely noticeable. I would call this a perfect adaptation, like from beginning to end. This is a perfect adaptation of the prologue of the manga, like without a doubt. I couldn't have asked for more. This is so amazing. It's a bummer that it's on Amazon Prime. Because that's the reason it flew under a lot of people's radar, I think.
Like, I mean, I made sure to tell a lot of people that I know who are into anime and like this kind of story, hey, do you have Amazon? Go watch this. And one of the guys I worked with, like, he started watching it like maybe a week or so later. He's like, yeah, I'm on episode 17. I'm like, good.
Yeah, and
watching.
Mutual friend of ours watched it and loved it too. I got one of my friends to watch it over here, and he loved it, and was even ahead of me at one point. It was like, did you see it? Did you see the newest episode? It's like, no, I haven't seen it yet. Shut up. I mean, I know the story, but shut up. And yeah, he's really interested to see a second season. Question is that gonna happen? I really want to see this team at Studio Wit do a full adaptation of the material, but if I'm not mistaken, the director said a second season is still up in the air at this point.
Yeah, Yabuta said that like pretty much close to the end. He was like, yeah, we want to do it, but we're not sure. Which, it's like, oh man.
I wonder. I mean, we still don't know if Studio Wit is going to do the final season of Attack on Titan, right? Has that been confirmed by now? Who is doing that?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's super weird. So, I mean, if they would do that, I would assume they are gonna do Attack on Titan first and then get back to Vinland Saga. That makes sense to me. But since we don't know if they're actually doing Attack on Titan, it's airing in fall. What the fuck? Where? What's going on? Like, I'm really confused and worried. And because with stuff like Berserk, it's like I hope for something good, and then it's a bummer because it sucks. And for this, it's like at the other end of the spectrum, because this is such a fucking good adaptation that I don't want any other studio to do it now. I want Studio Wit. I want this team with that vision, with those people doing what they did in season 1 to continue and do the entire series, the entire manga. And I mean, the manga is still running, but they also have only adapted the prologue. And supposedly the manga is wrapping up. So I think by the time they would have caught up to the manga, that would have wrapped up and they could finish the story. So if they keep going from this moment on, they could do the whole story, and that would be a dream come true. Like, I mean, I don't know how the story progresses. It could turn to shit. I mean, Planetis, but again, only the anime was shit at the very end. But this is a very different kind of story. So I don't think that will happen. And I loved the prologue of Vinland Saga so much. I don't think I will hate the rest of the story at some point. So I really want this to be continued. And I want this to be continued with this team, with that production crew, with the people at the helm here, because they did such a good job with the first season. Yeah, I'm at a loss for words of how much I like this. I think this is one of the anime of the decade, definitely.
It definitely deserves to be on that sort of list.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe not the top spot, but I can understand if it wouldn't be there. But it should be definitely in the running. Like, it's up there. And that might be unfair because it's not the whole story, but it's so well realized, even if it's only a part. And all the characters in there have great arcs. And are interesting and varied and complex, and everything the show is saying, and the different discussions it engages in are super interesting and engaging. And man, in my opinion, this is an absolute must-see for everyone. If you like anime and you're not too
put off by violence,
put off by violence too much, and you can handle your grim subject matter and angry revenge yelling boys, I guess, then you must see this. If I can dish out any recommendation, just fucking watch Vinland Saga. Like, it's a stellar production all around, like animation, art, music, you name it. Like a riveting plot, complex and engaging characters, and a really underused or unspent setting in anime. John, I think you agree.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know. I was only familiar with like the name of the series because you had been throwing it around for Jesus, I don't know how long. And then when it was finally like, hey, this is getting an anime, I knew you were super jazzed for it. I had no idea. I was like, oh, I guess I'll check this out. Oh, I guess this is pretty fucking good. And I really, really enjoyed it. I thought, the story that they told, like in particular with Astolad's arc, was really, really strong. And like, watch this show. Just do it. It's super worth watching.
It's definitely going to come up in the best of the season discussion. No doubt about it. And yeah, I have to agree with John. Just fucking watch it. I can't add anything more to that, anything more substantial to that. And I'm going to end with, I love this show, and I hope this prologue is not the last thing we see from this fantastic saga in animated form. And that is a wrap on the 88th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to vrt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for a review index and more. Leave us comments and questions on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at AnyBrainFreeze, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next episode. Macht's gut.
Take care, everybody. Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
Growing pains on the tennis court.
A continuation of skyfaring adventures with some new friends along the way.
And sometimes the only person that can save humanity is a mad scientist.